extra time.
He shoots, and it's a goal!
Hello and welcome back to the Extra Time podcast. It's me, your host, Patrick Van Straten, and this week I'm joined by Chris Hamill. Hello, Chris.
Hello, buddy. It's been a while since we had some quality one-on-one time. How are you?
I know. I'm all right. I think we've got some more one-on-one time tomorrow. I think we might be taking each other on the football pyramid. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not been great for me today. Today's been pretty desperate. I was explaining to you before we started shooting that I had chicken goujons and tin tomatoes for lunch. So hopefully this conversation really picks up the mood because, quite desperate in my household.
What did you do with the tin tomatoes? You just heat them up?
Yeah, just heated them up. Also had one round of toast. I need to explain that, times aren't tight. I just haven't been shopping. The Adriano one-on-one literally just sucked me in, and I've had time for nothing else.
Yeah, but I mean, a tin of tomatoes, man. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I probably need to readdress my priorities, to be honest. I'm going shopping this afternoon. I promise you.
All right, good for you. Well, today we're going to bring you two teams who have been shopping, but perhaps not quite in the way that they want to. We've got Barca and Juventus who are set to swap Arthur and Arthur-Pjanic this off-season. Now, according to reports, both players have already undergone medicals and signed their respective contracts. And we expect the announcement very, very soon. In fact, it might already have happened by the time you watch this. Arthur will join Juve for around 80 million euros, while Pjanic will cost Barca around 70 million euros. Chris, I've got to say, on the face of it, this makes absolutely zero sense to me.
No,
Can you make head or tail of it?
I mean, this just has creative accounting written all over it, doesn't it? From a sporting perspective, it makes very little sense paying £70 million for a 30-year-old and £80 million for a 23, 24-year-old who's only appeared for your club 75 times since you bought him from Gremio for 30 million, which was inflated as well at the time. I've got to say, for starters, I think I feel sorry for Arthur in this regard because, despite being paid more to play for Juve, and I think that was one of the reasons that they finally sealed his signature, he clearly didn't want to leave Barcelona. Paratici said 2 or 3 times in public that we're trying really hard to convince the player to come to Turin. So very, quite clearly they wanted him more so than he wanted to be a feature of the old lady. I think he wanted to make it work at Barcelona. In and out of the side, played on the left of a midfield 3 when perhaps he wanted to be a little bit deeper. Obviously not going to displace Sergio Busquets in that regard. But yeah, I imagine he wanted to stay. And had Barcelona had they had more hits than misses with transfers in recent times, that they may not have had to force him out the door in order to balance the books, because that's what this feels like. If they hadn't bought Griezmann, or if they'd made good on Ousmane Dembele and then not felt compelled to go back out there and sign 2 or 3 more players. Because there's certainly more disposable assets at Barcelona than a 23-year-old Arthur, Rakitic, Vidal. But are they going to get significant money for those players, enough to offset the red that they've generated through all these, through chasing glory, through these big money transfers? I just think he's probably become the victim, and I say victim very loosely because he's, of course, being paid a lot of money to play football. The victim in their transfer misdemeanors. And they probably want him to stay. They probably see him as the future of the midfield to an extent with De Jong, because he does have a skill set, reminiscent of old Barcelona greats. Despite, I know you're going to touch upon his sort of defensive numbers in a bit, and how his data is a little bit confusing as to what profile of player he really is. But it seemed like he was set to be a Barcelona player for at least a couple more years while he found his feet. I suppose before we move on to Pjanic, let me ask you, who do you think's getting, the better end of the deal here? Surely Juventus, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, by a long way. Look, I wouldn't sign Arthur for this money at all. I think it's a terrible idea. or at least it's a gamble that he'll be good, because he hasn't really been good for Barcelona. He's played just under 1,200 league minutes this year. He's got 3 goals and 3 assists, but he's pretty lucky to get that many. And when you look at his numbers, they just don't make sense. Like, if he does almost no defensive work, it's like it's under 1.5 tackles and interceptions.
Yeah,
a game.
not great.
So you'd kind of think, oh, okay, he must be getting forward and getting shots and key passes. He's taking 0.6 shots and creating 0.9 chances a game. So really, the only things he does is this season he started dribbling. He dribbles a lot and he dribbles well. He's got a really high dribble success rate, over 90%. He's dribbling like 2.5 times a game. That's great. Plays lots of passes, but I mean, playing lots of passes doesn't really mean anything. Like, you know, he plays 77 passes a game. Okay, like that can be anything. Like, he's a good progressive passer. I think he's 4th in the league for passes into the final third, but Busquets is ahead of him and De Jong's only just behind. So it's not like if you take him out of the side, you wonder how they'll get the ball forward. He's actually just like in between the two in those midfield. And I think sometimes with players like this, people will say, oh, he's got a 92% pass accuracy. He makes 80 passes a game. And I think that doesn't mean anything, like, in itself. That is not in itself adding value. So I think you have a good dribbler who's probably a good passer. He doesn't defend at all. He doesn't get into the final third. He's not particularly athletic. So I basically don't know what he is. And it's not like he's 2021 and I don't know what he is. He is going to be 24 this summer. And that's a bit troubling to me, because when I look at Juventus's midfield, I see Ramsey, who is older and on a very expensive contract, but that means you're not going to be able to shift him. Fortunately, Ramsey is an extremely good attacking midfielder. Like, he's very good at getting shots. Is Arthur a better ball progressor than Rabiot? You'd have to say no. Rabiot, I think, is as good a dribbler. He's certainly a much better defender. He's certainly as good a passer, if not better. And is he a better defensive midfielder than Bentancur? I would say no. So I kind of look at him and I think, look, 23-year-old, clearly talented, sure. Would I get him for 80 mil? I don't know. Because the thing is here, I mean, on the other hand, it gets Pjanic off your books. You're going to be paying Arthur a fair whack, but Pjanic was contracted, I think, until 2023 or something. Yeah. So getting him off the books at 30 years old is not the worst idea. I mean, what do you think Pjanic is going to bring to Barcelona, I guess?
Well, it's really interesting that you mentioned passing and passing accuracy in isolation, not really representing all that much, because a lot of people seem to think this is a great move from Juventus's perspective, because Pjanic has been unable to adapt to a Sarri system. And by unable to adapt to a Sarri system, I think they mean he's not replicating the numbers that Jorginho was creating when Sarri obviously generated Napoli's record points total year on year in that 3-year period where him and Jorginho were inseparable. And I mean, the numbers suggest that there might be, something small in that, something slight. His passes have remained at around 60 per 90. There's been instances where Bentancur has played number 6 and has hit 120 passes. I think a game against Udinese, he was absolutely superb in that regard. But then again, that just goes on to the point: is Bentancur being utilised to his maximum at Juventus right now? Is he the best alternative? I'm not quite sure. I must admit. But he's still top 5 for final third passes. There's only 2 players that complete more passes per 90 in Serie A than Pjanic. So it doesn't really stack up. So yeah, I don't... What does he offer Barcelona that Busquets already doesn't? I really don't know. Unless he's going to be like part of a double pivot, unless Setien wants to change from a 4-3-3 at times. I mean, the Barcelona squad is old as well, right? This is another troubling issue. I think there's around 4 or 5 players over the age of 25. Under the age of 25 that have racked up a meaningful amount of minutes this campaign. Everyone else over the age of 25. It doesn't feel like Barcelona are really future-proofing their squad. It feels like they're trying to stave off a resurgent Real Madrid by signing players who can contribute sort of in the here and now. And this is really emblematic of that. in my opinion.
Yeah, the stats on the age there, I've got them here.
Go on.
10 of the 14 players in Barcelona's squad to have played over 1,000 minutes this season are 28 or older.
Oh,
10
28.
out of 14.
Bloody hell, it's older than 25.
Seven of those are 30 or older.
Yeah.
So that's really worrying. And they're taking away one of their under 25s, one of their 4 under 25s, you were right there, who are Longley, Arthur, Ansu Fati and Junior Firpo, and replacing them with a 30-year-old in Pjanic.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's a good player, and 2 or 3 years ago, this would have made more sense. His key passes have halved from when he was in his pomp at Juve. I remember a time when he was hitting over 3, which made him one of the outstanding creators on a per 90 basis in the top 5 leagues. It's around 1.6 now. Juventus have struggled as a whole under Sarri. I think people are still really struggling to see what he's trying to achieve there. And no clear sense of players prevailing. The squad has been constantly rotated. You touched upon Ramsey and Rabiot earlier. I think they only have around 20 Serie A starts between them. And they're both on absolute cheddar, which Arthur, in order to convince him to come to Turin, is now also on a fair whack. So yes, they've got a 30-year-old off the books, but they've also committed another youngster to a lucrative contract for 5 years, I think it is. So it sort of feels like they're making Arthur out to be one of these seminal signings, like he's the last piece in the puzzle that makes it all click. And really, I'm not sure that's the case at Juve. I mean, Tacchianardi, a club legend, came out in recent weeks and he said, the midfield is sterile. And considering the talent they have, how is that the case?
I think, yeah, they haven't quite found the balance yet, and it's a bit worrying how many minutes you've seen guys like Matuidi get under Sarri. Because there's definitely a clear out that's needed at Juve. Like, I don't think it's as bad as Barca. I think Barca are in serious trouble. Whereas Juve, I think from Artur's point of view, I wonder if he was difficult to convince really on a playing basis. I think he was probably difficult to convince because he likes the idea of Barcelona and he wanted more money. Because actually, when you look at Juve, I think the future's a lot brighter for them than it is for Barca. Like, yes, they've got a bunch of guys they need to shift. Like you were saying, Ramsey and Ronaldo, big wages. Cuadrado, Sandro, who are key players. Sandro's 29, Cuadrado's 32.
Douglas Costa.
But yeah, they need to shift Douglas Costa. They need to shift Bernardeschi. They've also got Higuain, Khedira and Matuidi, who are all contracted till next year. They're going to re-up Chiellini till next year. But on the other hand, when you look at youngish players in the team, like 25, 26 and down, you look at Rabiot, Bentancur, De Ligt, Demiral, Dybala. Then they've got Romero to come back from loan, Luca Pellegrini to come back from loan, Dejan Kulusevski to come back from loan, and Arthur coming in. That is the core of a very good side for the next 5 years. Yeah,
and do you know what? I'd be a little bit more positive, a bit more upbeat about it if Sarri's sides were sort of reminiscent of his Napoli sides, playing unbelievable football. You could clearly, gauge what they were trying to do, but they weren't quite getting the results. Whereas they've been scraping the results. Ronaldo's been heavily reliant on penalties recently, and their performances have been far from convincing. Given the talent they have, they should be in a much more dominant position, shouldn't they? And just to go back to Arthur, I've only seen him a limited amount of times this season. And when I have, it's generally been in the Champions League. I think when his numbers have probably spiked a little bit. But it's great to see he can, like the game against Tottenham, he can run big games. And he can be a two-way midfielder. So I do think he's got loads of potential. And I'm a bit of a sucker for a Brazilian midfielder anyway. So yeah, like you said, I think Juve, getting the better of it, they have future-proofed their side better. But this feels like it's only happened, just to go back to your original point, it's only happened because two clubs have worked their way into a situation where they need to write off massive amounts of money. And they've done so by kind of trading two players that would otherwise have maybe finished their careers at their respective clubs.
I guess what I don't... My issue with it a little bit, though, is that I so often read criticism of extremely young midfielders. Like recently, for instance, we've been hearing this stuff where people say, "Oh, Guendouzi is just not a good player, and he's just never going to be like a quality player for Arsenal." And you think he's only just turned 21, or Tom Davies, who broke through at Everton and then got written off pretty much a year later, despite, again, I think being about 21. And you think those guys are 3 years younger than Arthur. And actually, when you watch them, they contribute a lot more. Like, Arthur has the advantage of playing in a really dominant side. But I guess on the Pjanic thing, my issue is that I think if he's been brought in to be a defensive presence, he's not going to be better at that than Busquets. He's never been an extremely good defender. He's been fine, but he's not going to be better than Busquets or De Jong. If he's been brought in to be a creative presence, you still have Coutinho, who's going to come back from loan.
Yeah.
You could just play him. And, you know, he obviously went out on loan before Setien came in. It might be that Setien would be okay with him. So I guess I just look at Pjanic and I think, this is not the long-term heir to Busquets. And this is not filling a hole that neither Busquets, Pjanic, maybe Sergi Roberto and Coutinho couldn't fill between them.
Yeah, and I think there's a lack
This feels really expensive.
I think there's a lack of physicality in that Barcelona midfield anyway. And they're not, or athleticism at least. I know De Jong can run for days and he does so very gracefully. But yeah, it's getting quite old. There's a lot of players who are much better in the final third than they are their own third. Rakitic, I think, was a little bit underappreciated in times gone by in the way that he kind of held that midfield together, because he was a really competent all-rounder as well. But his kind of legs look a little bit gone in the last few seasons, don't they? So yeah, I'm really unsure. Just to touch upon Guendouzi, because I've asked a few other Arsenal fans and I've not had the opportunity to ask you recently. Obviously, a lot of criticism has been levelled at him because of his attitude and things that he has apparently said. What do you make of that as an Arsenal fan?
It depends what we mean by his attitude. Like, if his attitude in training is bad, that's one thing. The Brighton game, I guess, is what people are talking about a lot, and I think he was pissed off and being a bit of a dickhead.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, he lost a close game and was kind of frustrated about it. And Mopé is obviously a bit of a pain in the arse as well. So I was just kind of, I didn't really think too much of that. I think that Arteta seems to rate him.
Yeah.
Like, I think, and so he should. He's 21 and he's a useful Premier League midfielder. Like, I think getting rid of him would be an extremely bad idea. I think it's something that Arsenal would regret.
Just because he was linked, wasn't he, with weirdly enough, a move to Manchester United, and I don't know if there's any legs in that. But I saw a couple of Arsenal fans saying that if they got a bid in the region of 30 to 40, he's nothing special, and they'd sell him, which kind of ties in with what you were saying about running out of patience with promising young players.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things, though, where fans often just don't realise how rare it is to have, like, a useful midfielder who is 2021. He might not be perfect, but I don't think he's, like, notably worse than other midfielders we have. And in terms of, like, the variety of the skill set he has, he's quite a bit better. I mean, like, he's a much better ball carrier than, say, Xhaka or Torreira. He's a better passer than Torreira, and I don't think he's that far off Xhaka. Like, he just needs to be taught to play the position. But like I say, he is so young. It's so rare to see a guy who's 21 and really contributing. And I think, you know, people like Harry Winks have their defenders. Harry Winks is 25 now, I think, maybe only 24, but he's like 3 or 4 years older than Guendouzi, and he's only just getting into that side, and even then he's not very good. So I mean, and you know, Guendouzi's a couple of years younger than Scott McTominay. So I think that there's I'm always a bit loath to write off young players, especially young midfielders, early, because I think good young midfielders are vanishingly rare. And Guendouzi's exactly the sort of player who, if he wasn't at Arsenal, you'd kind of say Arsenal need to be taking gambles on guys like this.
Yeah.
In the hope that they can develop a team of stars, because they're obviously not going to be able to buy them. Just to go back to what you were saying about creative accounting, on the Arthur-Pjanic thing. So Swiss Ramble on Twitter, who some of you may know, like, tends to dig into the financial side of the game, kind of explained how this move could be used for both sides to record a profit in their books of around 60 million euros. So player fees are amortized over the duration of the contract. So if you pay £40 million for a player and you give them a 4-year contract, that means that you pay that as 10 million a year in your accounts. Now, Barca still owe about 20 million euros on him. So by selling him for 80 million euros, they can record a 60 million euro profit. Juve still owe 13 million on Pjanic because they extended his contract and it goes down. And so they can make around 57 million euros in profit when he goes to Barcelona. So even though the difference is only 10 million, you can record it in your books this year, kind of for financial fair play reasons, as about 60 mil. On the other hand, in reality, it does only net Barcelona 10 million euros. So it's really worrying about the financial future of that club. Like Chris, like you were saying, do you expect them to try and sell some more assets this summer? And do you think they'll be able to?
I mean, I struggled with GCSE maths, so this isn't my strong suit, although you explained it very clearly there. Yeah, I mean, they have to. Just to touch upon earlier what we said, like they have chased, because they've failed with big signings, they have then gone after other big signings, in the summer immediately after. And I sort of brought up the whole Dembele, Griezmann, Coutinho conundrum earlier. To have signed those players year on year, something has to give eventually. And unfortunately, it's been players who could probably contribute to the future of the club and who are perfectly, functioning members of the team like Arthur. But where has Arthur's valuation come from? Crazy in my eyes at the moment. So yeah, if they can, apparently they're going to sell Vidal. I think if they can keep Vidal and the fee isn't significant, then keep him for another year because he's been a very useful substitution when he's come on. Rakitic, they probably should have parted ways with a year ago, but I also kind of think the same about him. Junior Firpo has been linked with moves away, hasn't he? Maybe as a sort of auxiliary midfielder defender for Liverpool. Nelson Semedo has also been linked with moves to Manchester City. And it's worrying when that many components of your side are linked with moves to other big clubs. And the players we're still talking about as the core of Barcelona are Sergio Busquets, who's had to play a superhuman amount of football in order to keep that club going. Ter Stegen, great age, got him tied down to a long-term deal. Good business. Messi, again, has had to be superhuman to keep Barcelona competitive at the top of La Liga. And who else is really, really crucial to that side? Who else forms the spine? I might be forgetting about someone really obvious.
PK.
Yeah, PK, of course. Frankie de Jong is going to be that guy. Jordi Alba has improved at a time when I thought he might have dropped off. But the overwhelming core of that squad was still the core 5-6 years ago, right? So what's happened in the interim?
It's really worrying that Real Madrid have gone and really increased the quality, or bought more young players than Barcelona, because it does just make you look at Barcelona and think, if they can't add substantially to this squad over the next 2 years, then I seriously worry for them in kind of 2023. I have no idea what they're going to be able to do, because they could suddenly drop off a cliff. Like if Messi suddenly turned human, which is possible one of these days, then I have no idea what they're going to be left with. Like a 30-year-old Griezmann, a 34-year-old Suarez. I know, it's very, very worrying.
I forgot about Luis Suarez, who scored a brace in the last couple of days in La Liga. Like he's still finding, I guess, form where we thought it might have begun to sort of exponentially escape him. So yeah, it's still a bit of a stalwart up front for them as well, isn't it? Obviously a great player. I just escaped my mind then. What else was I going to say? I mean, Real Madrid, do you think they're going to clinch La Liga? Because having watched, I only watched a couple games since the break, they look so much stronger than Barcelona at the moment.
I think they've been better than Barcelona all year, and actually I think Atleti have been as well. I kind of hope they go on and do it. I think they deserve it for the way Zidane's rejigged the squad this year. It's been really, really impressive. And when you look at guys like Vinicius, like Rodrigo, like Ferland Mendy, like Eder Militao, I suppose Valverde, you kind of look around that squad and you think there's a lot more to come from this group of players.
And also, I think if no one comes in for Coutinho or Dembele in a big way, then Barcelona are still struggling, right? Even after this transfer with FFP, surely.
Yeah, well, who knows? I mean, it's always impossible to tell, isn't it, with Barcelona's finances? But the future does not look particularly bright. I mean, over the next 5 years, if you had to guess, let's say that Pjanic is at Barca for the next 4 years, and so is Arthur at Juventus. Who do you think will win more titles? Who do you think has a better shot of winning the Champions League?
Oh, well, and so Messi in 4 years will be 37, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think Conte is going to be a thorn in Sarri's side over the next 3 or 4 years. I don't think Juventus are going to have it anywhere near as easy as they've had it. Even in the face of like stiff competition from Sarri's Napoli before. I think that dominance is going to come to an end, particularly if Inter secure the likes of Hakimi. We're going to talk about it in a bit, I think. So I think it might be fairly even. They're going to be one of two sides in each respective division who's going to be favourites for those titles for the next 3 or 4 years moving forward. But yeah, I mean, Arta probably will win more domestic silverware, and Pjanic to say he's going to be hitting these numbers at 34 is extremely optimistic, isn't it?
Very non-committal.
Yeah, it's a good question, but it's a tough hypothetical. I think that they'll both come away with domestic championships. History would say that at least they're going to win one of the next 3, right? More so Arthur, obviously, but I just, if Arthur enjoys 6 or 7 years of consistent first team football where he finds out what sort of player he is, it's going to look like a savvy investment by Juventus and just more bad business by Barcelona. The odds would dictate that this is going to be in Juve's favour. Yeah, it is non-committal. You're right. I've been trying to dig out an answer for 30 seconds there and I can't.
Well, pretty embarrassing, to be honest with you. I think it's best we end this section and then we'll come back and talk about Hakimi to Inter Milan. So just before we get into our next section, we'd like to bring you a word from our sponsors, who are Harry's. Now, they specialise in bringing you top quality shaving equipment, which is something that in lockdown is definitely needed. Like, I'm persisting with the equipment I have available to me right now. But Harry's, I've got to say, is vastly superior. Chris, what's your beard / moustache situation? I feel like I can see a little moustache going on there.
You've said beard there to openly mock me. All right, my struggles with facial hair, very well known. In fact, I'm being served several ads on Instagram, about those little rollers that are supposedly supposed to magic up a beard from nowhere. That are supposed to conjure some testosterone that I clearly don't have. But no, I actually shaved yesterday, so this is actually pretty dark for 1 day's worth. I mean, you've sampled Harry's, right? So... Mm-hmm. I mean, 1, send me some of those goods, please, you little hoarder. And 2, just how much better are they than a normal razor?
Well, I found it to be incredibly comfortable. Like, I think a lot of people, for some people, they just like the beard look, and that's generally true for me. But you still need to neaten it up. But I think a lot of people also don't tend to shave that much because they don't like using safety razors, or because other 4 or 5 blade brands are extremely expensive and quite uncomfortable. And the thing about Harry's is it leaves your face really smooth. So it's a relatively aggressive shave in that way, but it doesn't hurt at all. You're not going to get ingrown hairs. You're not going to end up with, with like a rash from cutting. Like, it's an incredibly comfortable, smooth shave. So you get this handle, which is kind of weighted, so it feels really nice in your hand. You're not going to press too hard accidentally. And then it's a 5-blade cartridge with this lubricating strip and a little trimmer blade, so you can do the neatening up. And if you sign up for this trial set, then you can support our podcast while sampling Harry's merchandise. So for £3.95, they will send you a razor handle, the 5-blade cartridge, the foaming shave gel, and a travel blade cover, so you can take it with you on the go. Not that you're going to be going anywhere right now. If you go to harrys.com/extra. And the thing is, it's actually not only is it great quality, but it's really good value relative to a lot of the other leading brands, almost half the price, which is pretty remarkable, really, for a product of this quality, I think.
Yeah, nice. As soon as you said ingrown hair there, I used to get some tricky ones, sort of in the crevice between nose and tash.
Whoa,
and they
rough.
are absolutely catastrophic. Yeah, I mean, could you theoretically just splash a bit of water on there? Is it good enough just to go at it? If I forget last minute before a show, for example, which I often do.
I mean, you can definitely do it. I wouldn't do the whole of your face with it, but certainly the areas that you shave more often that are a little bit tougher, you could definitely do. And certainly with the trimmer.
Yeah.
Like with a trimmer, I almost never use the shave gel because, like I want to see exactly what I'm doing. And there you just turn it over and like a little bit of water is pretty much enough for you to have enough lubrication just to like trim up the corners of your moustache or like line up your beard a little bit. It's very good, man.
I'm all about having enough lubrication. And shout out to Harry's for supporting the podcast through lockdown as well.
Exactly. So if you would like to get your trial set with Harry's, go to harrys.com/extra for that razor handle, 5-blade cartridge, foaming shave gel, and travel blade cover. That's harrys.com/extra. Let's move into the next section. So our second transfer also concerns big clubs in Spain and Italy. Inter Milan are set to sign Achraf Hakimi from Real Madrid for 40 million euros plus 5 million euros in bonuses. This seems like a steal, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, we might be contradicting what we just said in the last section, right, about how Real Madrid have been conducting better business in Barcelona.
Yeah.
Because selling this guy for £45 million seems absolutely absurd. Like, his defensive contributions are solid. I think in the Champions League, his tackles and interceptions at 3 per 90, which is fine. It's not exceptional. It's not Aaron Wan-Bissaka levels, is it? But going forward, there are very few players in world football down the right flank full stop that contribute to goals as regularly as Hakimi. I think he's got 15 goal contributions in 29 starts, which is absurd. And there's been times where he's played right wing in a front three. And he's an unbelievable presser in that regard. If Conte gets hold of him, he could be absolutely deadly. And what an upgrade he'd be on the existing members in Inter's squad, because Candreva, who I believe is Conte's preference, Candreva, Moses, those guys are getting on, and no one comes close to the level that Hakimi's currently operating at, which is no sort of trying to do them a disservice, because not many people do, right? It's an unbelievable bit of business, and all they have is Odriozola on loan at Bayern, and what's his name?
Carvajal.
Danny Carvajal, who's 28, right?
Yeah, he's 28. He's often injured as well, and you just think this is exactly the guy coming through. Like, it's not like the left side where they're absolutely stacked. They've got Marcelo, they've got Ferland Mendy, they've got Reguilon. Like, this is the perfect player, and from my point of view, it would have been much better for them to look at selling Odriozola or look at selling even Carvajal if they wanted, because Hakimi is good enough to be starting there. Whereas Inter, you're absolutely right. I was looking at their wing-back options, and they've got Biraghi, who's 27, but then Candreva, who's 33, Ashley Young, who's 34, Moses, who's 29, though he's on a loan, and I doubt they'll make that permanent now, Asamoah, who's 31, and D'Ambrosio, who's 31. And they're bringing in a 21-year-old superstar attacker. I mean, he doesn't have huge shot numbers. He doesn't have huge key pass numbers. His expected goal and assist numbers, in fact, are some way behind his actual goal and assist numbers. He's run hot this season, but he's a fantastic dribbler. He'll comfortably top the squad in dribbles. He's completing about 2.5 a game this season, and Inter's top player is Barella on 1.7. And assuming he gets a little bit better, given that he's 21, that seems pretty safe, you might have genuinely one of the best fullbacks in the world. And they've got a decent core of young players there. They've got Bastoni, who's 21, Barella, 23, Sensi, 24, Skriniar, 25, Lautaro Martinez, who's 22. They're pursuing Tonali from Brescia, who's 20. It just seems like Inter, oddly for a Conte side, they do seem to be doing a decent job of signing up younger players.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I was kind of umming and ahhing about Arthur's chances of being part of Juventus's second wave of domestic dominance under Sarri, because Inter have just made great signings for the future. Like Barella was one of the outstanding two-way midfielders. Sensi as well in the division before he joined. Sensi has been injured. His time in the starting XI has ebbed and flowed, but his numbers have been insane. So yeah, you add Hakimi to that. You add a bona fide superstar at right back, which is such a key position for Conte's system, right? Both fullbacks, and all of a sudden you have a side that can go toe to toe with Juventus. I'm not saying that them winning the league is dependent on signing Hakimi, but it's a big step forward.
Yeah, definitely. It's really an advantage for them. And they also seem to be getting him at under market value. Like, we often use transfer market valuations, but we also tend to say that they're pretty conservative. Like, normally they'll say a player's worth like 60 mil and that player would probably go for 100 mil. They've said Hakimi's worth 54 million euros and he's going for 45. In fact, they've said the only fullbacks more valuable than Hakimi in world football are Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson. Now, personally, I'd say Hakimi's probably more valuable than Robertson because of age, and maybe about the same as Alphonso Davies. You know, if we're counting him as a fullback now, it's difficult to say. But the fact remains, he's one of the most exciting, most valuable, most versatile fullbacks in world football, and Inter are getting him for what is basically a song. Like, why aren't Chelsea or Man City going for this guy?
Well, particularly Chelsea, as they seem so willing to pursue Ben Chilwell, who'd probably cost near enough twice that amount, which is absurd. If a club goes after a player for £30 million now, you don't bat an eyelid, and you expect them to be solid, and you expect them to contribute in a decent sense, right? That seems to be the benchmark for a promising youngster. I think Firpo might have cost Barcelona in the region of 25 to 30, right? Just as an example, from a fullback perspective. But this guy, I don't understand how there's not more competition for him. João Cancelo cost 15 million more, and João Cancelo was bought predominantly. I know there's a Danilo part exchange or whatever, but he was bought predominantly for his attacking influence, for how often he got crosses into the box, for how many deep progressions he made. But they don't come close over the course of a season to what Hakimi has been doing at Dortmund. And given that Dortmund are probably going to get 130, 140 for Jadon Sancho when he chooses to go, they'll probably get something similar for Haaland. I don't know how someone who's demonstrated equally as good a form or equally as good a pedigree, how he isn't going for close to 60, 70. And even then at 60, I think that would be reasonable.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this is a really, really bad move for Real Madrid. I think this is even worse than last summer when they sold Kovacic, to be honest with you. But
yeah, I mean, and we might see actually a bit of a fire sale at Real Madrid as well, where Isco, Rodriguez, James Rodriguez, obviously Hakimi. I mean, other fullbacks still might go as well, right? I know Reguilon and Odriozola have been out on loan. Is Reguilon still out on loan? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, he's at Sevilla.
Yeah, at Sevilla. So we might see some of them take a 30-40% hit on players after 18 months, 2 years, which isn't great. But fortunately, like you mentioned in the prior section, they've bought well. They've not spent, they didn't spend an awful lot on Jovic or an awful lot on Vinicius, given the potential they have, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. But anyway, for Conte, it certainly seems the perfect signing. If you're a wing-back centred coach, this is pretty much as good a signing as you could make this summer. So well done to Inter Milan, I guess. And the question is whether they can take the title away from Juve next season, because I think that it's probably going to Turin this season, don't you think?
Yeah, I'd like to think that Inter can make a late charge, or Lazio can sort of sustain this form and take them to the final match week. But yeah, they're going to be hurting after losing that Coppa Italia final as well. And just keep grinding out victories, man. They're so grindy this season in Serie A. I mean, just going back to the fullback, some of the fullback business that's been conducted recently in Italy. Like AC Milan have just spent millions and millions trying to find competent fullbacks, haven't they? I don't know, Hernandez has been great for them this season, but yeah, the idea that they're cross-city rivals I mean, is it Calabria that springs to mind? They've bought a few boys from Atalanta that haven't really panned out. But yeah, 45 mil, mate. Oh, mate, it's great that that sort of business can still be conducted by a big club. It obviously shows there's still bargains to be had. But yeah, class.
Nice. Well, Chris, just before we go, let's have a little chat about how you're faring in lockdown. What are you missing most in lockdown right now?
When I was watching Leicester Chelsea yesterday, and I was thinking, football was not nearly the same watching it without your friends at the pub, is it? Particularly when it's not a very good game. So there is that, the sort of the social element attached to football. I don't think you realise, sometimes football is just used as a bit of a driver to bring you all together, isn't it? Rather than you actually being fanatical about it in the first place. So yeah, the social side of football for sure. And just, I'm sick of washing dishes, mate. Like I just like to have a meal and not have to wash the dishes. So I miss going out to restaurants. What about your fine self?
Why don't you buy some paper plates or something and then just chuck the fuckers out like when you're done?
Because then I feel bad about the turtles, man, and so on and so forth.
You can get recyclable ones.
Yeah, but what cutlery am I using? Because I've still got to wash that up. Plates are the easiest thing to wash up
cutlery
as well. Yeah, plastic cutlery, but that's a big no-no, isn't it? Single-use plastic. Trying to cut down on that. Trying to do my part, but yeah. So meals. I don't know about you. Excluding the lunch I had today, like you don't normally decide what you want for lunch. You go out and pick it, right? So when my girlfriend says to me, "What do you want for lunch?" I'm genuinely stumped every time, and like I just start to get like ratty. Like I don't know. I don't know.
I do know what you mean. Or you look in the cupboards and you're like, there's actually nothing in this house unless I want to like make bread again. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like it's a luxury problem to have, but it is a bit irritating. What have you learnt about yourself in lockdown? Might be a skill, might be something about yourself, maybe just that you enjoy a particular book or series, that you've discovered.
Yeah, I mean, reading books for pleasure, not just as a way to tire myself out before the end of the day. I kind of missed that, like going to the park on occasion with Lauren, and we'd just be there for a couple of hours and just reading, and that's been great. So sort of, I'm reading a book on Socrates, Dr. Socrates, the Brazilian footballer at the moment. Just a really interesting football personality. And my whole lockdown has got me back into reading. Definitely. And I kind of enjoy being handy. So like the simple pleasures of completing tasks around the house has been like, I've been like FaceTiming friends who are like welders or carpenters and just going through like really basic things with them, like putting up shelves, blinds, fixing doors, and the satisfaction, the quiet satisfaction of doing one of those tasks yourself. Yeah, I've really bloody enjoyed, mate.
It is time consuming though. Like I'm repainting the front door at the moment, and I was also stripping paint in the bathroom. Though now we're going to get somebody in to repaint it, just because it's actually a much bigger job than I thought it was, and I don't have a week free to do it. But yeah, I'm going to repaint the front door. So I've been kind of doing a lot of DIY stuff as well. I think I'm going to replace a radiator, and I might rewire an extractor fan. I was going to teach myself to rewire this extractor fan, so We'll see if I can do it.
That's advanced,
based on the wiring,
mate. Have you ever bled a radiator as well? That's really satisfying, because all the gunk and stuff comes out of it.
I haven't. I've heard it's quite good fun, but I've also heard that it can just drop the pressure in the whole house. So I guess this would be a good time to do it while it's like 30 degrees out.
Painting is also... Do you know what I did the other day? I went to paint because this is a proper old man problem. I get really annoyed when the bins disappear after the bin men come round. And like I've just had to steal bins back from neighbours in the dead of night before, or gone round a corner. And so I painted the numbers on the bins, but I knocked over the little paint pot while I was doing it, and it went all over the road, and I ended up having to like scrub the road with like bleach and whatever. And like painting's one of those things where like it sounds like a good idea doing it yourself till you realize like it's such like if one thing goes wrong when you're painting, it sets off a domino effect. It's an absolute catastrophe. So yeah, like I remember trying to paint my mum's dancing school for her without those thick sheets, and kind of taping them to the wall and whatnot, and just ruining her carpet. And essentially, I tried to save her some money by me painting it, and then she had to replace the carpet. Like it's devilish, mate. Painting. So good luck to you.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes. I mean, fortunately, it looks so shit at the moment that there's only so much I can screw it up. But I've sanded it down. I took off the metalwork and cleaned that because the people who painted it before us had really, really half-arsed it. So yeah, finally kind of sorting out things around the house that have been waiting for a while.
Nice.
Anyway, Chris, thanks very much for coming on the show today. Is there anything that people should go and check out after this?
Pleasure, buddy. Yeah, of course. I recently finished a one-on-one on Adriano, like I said at the start of the show. Please go and check that out. Something, a bit of a labour of love. Go and check out the last podcast with Sam Obaseki. Really enjoyed listening to that in my downtime. And what about... this goes out, what about the latest XI on Football Daily as well? Because it was comprised of... I did watch it through today. It was comprised of players who... were rejected by their clubs when they were younger. I actually found it fascinating. So, yeah.
Interesting. Thanks very much, Chris. And thank you to all of you for listening or watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
It's extra time.
He shoots, and it's a goal.